evening, everybody. Hi, I hope you're all right. I hope you're all staying well in this really tricky time. Thank you for joining me this evening and what I hope will be a super relaxing um, and just a bit of self-care, really. So, um, just to introduce myself to any of you who don't know me, my name is Alice Douglas and I own two acupuncture clinics in southeast London. And due to the coronavirus, both of those clinics are shut. So I have been trying to think of ways that I can support my patients, but also the wider community in this time without being able to use needles, which is obviously a very big part of what I do, and without actually being able to see people. And that's why I've started doing these webinars. So this is the second one, and they're now happening every Thursday at 8:30 for the rest of April. And they are basically a chance for you to follow along with me as I demonstrate acupressure that will help relieve anxiety and stress. If you were here last week, then hello. I'm glad that you found it beneficial. There was some really great feedback after last week, which is why I decided to make it a weekly thing. I hope that the great thing about these is that each session, you don't need to have done it before, you don't need to know anything or prepare anything, you just have to show up. But also that as a sequence, they will work really nicely. They won't just be the same thing being repeated. They'll actually be building, and if you carry on with the sequence, you'll learn more skills and learn new things as we go along. That's the idea anyway. If you haven't had acupuncture before, or you're not sure what it is, basically it's an ancient Chinese medicine that uses channels that go across the body. These channels all relate to different organs and they have points on them, which are what we call acupuncture points. And all of those points have different functions. And those points are where we would put needles if you were in an acupuncture treatment. What we can do ourselves is we can use our hands to kind of mimic the action that a needle would do. And it's kind of a bit like a less strong treatment. But the great thing about acupressure is we can do it ourselves and we can administer that as and when we need it, and we can use it a lot more than we can use kind of your weekly acupuncture session or something. Whereas this, you can be doing as much as you feel you need. So that's the idea. So few things to note. The first thing is breathing. So I'm going to keep reminding you to breathe throughout the session. And I'm not going to give you a specific count to follow because everyone is different. But what works for me is breathing in for 4 and out for 7. So if you just try that now, breathing in for 4 and then out for 7, and see how comfortable that feels for you. Which part's too long, too short, what works for you? Everybody's different. The only thing that's important here is that the out breath is longer than the in. This is because if we think about in anxiety or in panic, when we hyperventilate, the in breath often becomes longer, and we have this. And that is basically a trigger for our central nervous system to go into fight or flight, which is this state of panic that we end up in. When we have a longer out breath, we calm the central nervous system and we bring the system back into rest and recuperation and out of that fight or flight, which obviously is the state we definitely want to be in at the moment. So that's the important thing, having the longer out breath. Then when it comes to the pressure that we're using, you do want to apply a significant amount of pressure. However, obviously don't have anything being really uncomfortable or anything like that. Each point that we do, we'll do a sequence of 3 different movements. First of all, I'll just say apply pressure. Just using your finger or your thumb, whatever feels comfortable. You're just holding the point. I'm then going to say small circles, literally just moving the finger in small circles on that point. And I'm then going to say big circles, which is just a slightly larger movement on that point. So that's going to happen for each one, and I'll tell you exactly when you do it, so you don't need to remember it really. Okay, hopefully this is all working okay and everyone can see me fine and we're good to go. Okay, so we're going to start with a point that is the highest point on the body, so it's on the top of our heads. To find this point, The easiest thing to do is come onto the ear and think about kind of the apex of the ear, so the highest point of the ear, like so, if you were to be picked up by your ears. From here, run up and over onto the top of the head so your fingers meet. And you want to be on the midline as well, so if you think about a line running from between your eyes, back and over. So we're resting here and apply that pressure. So this is the highest point on the body. So now start to think about that breath. Making sure that that out breath is longer than the in. Okay, and now small circles. So this point is all about bringing clear yang, clear energy up to the brain and nourishing it. So it's a really important point for letting kind of negative, bad energy descend in the body and allowing the clear energy to raise and nourish the brain. And big circles. Which is why this point can also be really useful for concentration. And just getting a sense of clarity of thinking. This point's really great for that. As well as just generally lifting the mood. Okay. Now we're doing another point on the head, this time slightly more on the side. So to find this point, what you're going to do is come in front of the ear and go about 1 centimetre in front, which for me is in line with my hairline here. I'm going to move up and keep going until I'm about 1 centimetre back into the hairline. I'm just going to do that again for you. So you're coming about 1 centimetre forward, up, about 1 centimetre back into the hairline. That's the point that we're looking for. And we're going to do that on both sides. So we're coming forward and then back into the hairline by about 1 centimetre. That's the point, so apply pressure. Again, think about that breath. And this point in English is called heads binding. And it's called that because this is the meeting point for all the channels that run across the head. They all meet at this point. Small circles. And that's why this can be a really great point for headaches, especially headaches that are coming from anxiety, stress headaches. This can be a really nice point because you're actually impacting on all the channels running across the head. And big circles. It's also used for overthinking and for when we can't get the brain to really switch off and those circular thoughts that can often come with anxiety. This point's really good at causing the brain to have to stop, the mind to have to stop churning information over. Okay, now we're actually moving behind the ear. So the easiest way to do this is place one finger behind your earlobe. You should feel a bony protrusion there. And what we're going to do once you're on that bony protrusion, roll back away from the ear off that bone. You should fall into a dip. And the same on the other side. So feel behind the ear, you'll feel that bony protrusion. Now roll back away from the ear and apply pressure. And think about the breath, making sure the out breath is longer than the in. And small circles. And this point is in Chinese is called An Mian, which translates as peaceful sleep. So it's an amazing point if you're having any difficulty sleeping. And big circles. And so if you are struggling with sleep at the moment, for whatever reason, this is a really great one to use whilst lying down in bed. You can just gently apply pressure to this point. Okay, now we're going to move on to the chest. Excuse my sunburn. And so to start with, if you just come down to the crease of your armpit here and come to the highest point of that crease, and you're going to move about a centimetre in. Now I find this point easier. We're going to do again both sides at the same time. I find this easiest to use your thumb on both sides. And if you had a prod around here, you'll probably be able to feel somewhere quite tender, often on most patients, and that's where we want to be applying the pressure. And thinking about the breath. So this point, we're starting to just move the energy across the chest. Release some of the tension that we hold in the chest, especially with stress and anxiety. And small circles. And this point also is where the insertion of the muscles, our pectoral muscles that run across the front here. This is the insertion of those muscles, which are often very tight, partly from spending so much time on computers and phones, bringing the shoulders forward. So this is a great point to release those muscles and really push the chest out. And big circles. This point is also the start of the lung channel. So it has a really great effect at boosting the immunity, which is definitely something we could all use at the moment. Okay. The next one, to start with, we need to find the collarbone, so just the bone running across the top here. And come towards the end of the collarbone, the inside end here. Have your fingers on the collarbone and now drop down. You should feel you drop off the bone into a gap. Move your fingers down again. You're now on bone again. This is your first rib. Drop down again. You're in a gap. Drop down again. You're now on bone on the second rib. Drop down again. You're in a gap. Once more, you might have to move in, especially women will now have to move in a bit closer to be able to feel. You should be able to drop down again, off the third rib and into a gap. And hold that there. You are going to be on breast tissue here, so it can be quite uncomfortable, so be careful how much pressure you're applying. There's about 2 centimetre gap between my fingers. So at this point, we're continuing to open up the chest and move that energy across the heart and the lungs here. And small circles. This point translates as spirit burial ground, which is because this is where we believe that the spirit rests at night. But therefore it can hold a lot of negative emotion because of that. And big circles. And that can be quite large trauma, but it can also just be the trauma of the day. Just our stresses from day-to-day life will move to this point to rest whilst we sleep. So it's a really great idea to press this point before bed to get things moving before, not allow that negative energy to rest here overnight. Okay, now if you were here last week, you'll remember me talking about whether your anxieties come from the heart or the stomach. If you weren't, so in Chinese medicine, we see these anxieties as slightly different. If your anxieties are coming from the stomach, then the likelihood is they come with nausea, vomiting, abdominal distension, or pain in the abdomen. The chest is more, if it's coming from the heart, there's likely to be tightness in the chest, shortness of breath, those sorts of symptoms. So think about which one do you think is you? Is it nausea and vomiting, or is it more around the shortness of breath? If you think both, think about which is the most prominent. And if you're not sure, go with the heart. But we're now going to do a point that correlates to either one. So if your anxieties come from the heart, then we want to be about in line with the nipple, on the midline, on the breastbone. So just in here, about in line with the nipple. Again, this is harder to find on women, but just roughly. And that's where we want to be applying pressure for the heart. If we want to be finding a point for the stomach, we need this point as well, and our belly button, and we're coming halfway between. So about there. And apply pressure. So make sure you've picked either one. Are the anxieties coming from the heart or from the stomach? I'm thinking about the breath. And small circles. So in Chinese medicine, each organ correlates to a different emotion, and the heart is joy, but it's also anxiety when it's more irrational. So if you think your anxiety comes from more rational sources, it's likely to be coming from the heart. The digestive system is more around worry and big circles. So the digestive system is kind of worry, overthinking, more anxieties over day-to-day activities that you might do. Okay, now we're coming onto the arm. The easiest way to find this point, we're coming onto the top half of the arm, is to actually place your thumb into your armpit and then rest 3 fingers. Where the bottom edge of that bottom finger is, that's the line which the point is on. So you can use your little finger now to hold that point so you don't lose your place. So that's where we want to be. And we want to be, sorry, I'll just move that. We want to be in between the 2 muscles that we have lying here. Now, if you just relax your arm, you should be able to feel a bit of a difference between, say, round here, round on the side, and then you should feel you're falling into a dip and you're in between muscle here. That's where we want to be. So apply that pressure. And thinking about the breath. And small circles. And this point is called the Palace of Heaven. And I think it might be one of my favourite points. But one of the main functions is it's about returning joy. And big circles. And so, as I said, each organ has its own emotion, and the emotion of the lung, which is the channel that we're working on right now, is sadness. And weeping comes from the lung as well. So that's why this point's really important in trying to move some of that sadness. Okay, let's switch to the other arm. So just do the same again. Place your thumb underneath the armpit, 3 fingers down, in between 2 muscles. Relax the arm to be able to find that easier. And apply pressure. And bring the concentration back to the breath. and small circles. And as in the ancient theory that each organ has its own emotion, each organ also has its own soul, and each soul is seen to be responsible for different things. And the soul of the lung is all about our interactions with other human beings. Big circles now. And so, this is the soul that's probably struggling the most with our current situation of not having those normal interactions with people. And so, our lungs could be struggling because of that. So, it's really good to work this point and nourish that soul. Okay. Now, the next one on the arm. For you, it's best if you have your arm just resting on your leg. I'm going to have mine held up just so you can see, but just resting the arm is probably the easiest way to find it. And for this point, we're coming onto the inside edge of the arm, and we're going to be sitting on the wrist crease. If you come to the corner up from the wrist crease, slightly onto your palm on that outside edge there, you should feel quite a small rounded bone. If you place your finger on there, you should be able to roll off sitting on the wrist crease. And I've now got my finger kind of on the edge. You should be able to roll off the bone, and that's the acupuncture point. When you've got your hand like this, it's quite easy to find. And just apply that pressure. And think about the breathing. So remembering that it's all about having the out breath longer than the in breath. And small circles. So this point is on the heart channel, and it's called Shen Men, which translates as spirit gate. And so it's kind of the principal point for calming the mind for any reason. And big circles. Okay, and now moving to the other side. So again, you're coming up, you're sitting, the point sitting on the wrist crease. Find that bone on the outer edge here, this small rounded bone, and now roll off and apply pressure. And make sure you're thinking about the breathing as well. And small circles. And this is a really amazing point because not only is it calming the mind, but it also nourishes both the energy and the blood of the heart. And big circles. Okay, we're now going to be coming onto the legs. So I'm going to move the camera slightly just so it's easier for you guys to see. So we'll probably lose the top of my head, but it will be easier for you. So I'm just going to roll up my pajama bottoms. And so we're going to do both legs at the same time. You can be sitting however's comfy for you. And what we need to do to start is find the bottom of your kneecap. If you're sitting with your legs half bent, it shouldn't be too tricky to find. And what you should feel below that is another kind of bony protrusion, which you can again drop below that as well. And now place two hands underneath each other. This is the line that the point that we're looking for sits on. And we want to be kind of up against this bone that runs up the front of our legs. So I'm on this line and I'm just next to the bone, which is running here, and applying pressure. And we're going to do this on both sides at the same time. So again, you're finding the bottom of the kneecap coming below, under that bony protrusion. Two hands and next to the bone. And they should be about in line with each other. So hold that pressure. And think about the breathing. And small circles. And this point links really nicely with the point we did right at the beginning. It's pulling down any kind of negative, turgid energy down in the body. And again, allowing for that cleaner, clear energy to rise, and therefore calming the mind. And big circles. One thing to note with this point, it has been known from people applying pressure, it can start to cause you, if you're quite a phlegmy person, got a lot of phlegm on the chest or in the nose, you can see that start to move. So either with coughing or nasal discharge. It's a good thing if it happens, but it can be a kind of something that happens with pressure on this point. Okay, and now we're moving on to the inside of the leg. How I'm going to show you it this way, but again, we're going to do both at the same time. So sit however's comfortable so that you can get to the inside of both legs. What we're doing for this point, if you find the kind of ankle bone on the inside of your leg, the round bone on the inside that protrudes quite a lot on most people, and come 3 fingers above that, so about here. From here, We want to be not on the bone, which you can feel if you press here, and not on this really fleshy bit round the back. Somewhere where you're not on the bone, but it's not gone too fleshy. That might sound a bit nondescript, but actually if you have a feel, you'll probably realise what I'm talking about. And we're doing that on both sides at the same time. So just apply that pressure. And small circles. And this point is actually where the three main channels of the leg all meet. And that's the spleen, the kidney, and the liver are all meeting at this point. So it's a massive point that can have a lot of influence over the body. And big circles. And it's really good for just calming the mind and lowering the energy. So throughout this session, we've just pulled the energy down to try and ground us and relieve some of that stress and anxiety. Okay, we're going on to the last point. This one is on the sole of the foot, and again, we're going to do both at the same time. And if you can see on my foot, you have the balls of the feet here. We're coming below that into a dip most people can feel, and if you can't feel it, you can probably see it. If I just squeeze my toes slightly, you can see a bit of a dip forms just below. We're coming below in here and holding that on each, sitting however's comfortable for you. So for me, that's sitting like this. You could be cross-legged, however's comfy, so that you can be holding the bottom of both feet. And on this one, we're not going to be doing anything other than just holding. We're not going to do any circles on this one. Make sure you're really focusing on that breath now. So this is the lowest point on the body, and it's believed to be responsible for what grounds us. And the ancient theory is that this is the point that grounds us to the earth, not just physically, but also emotionally. So this is something that you can use if you're ever feeling like you're needing that grounding, a bit more security, you need a bit more of a feeling of safety. This can be an amazing point. Okay, that's it for this week, guys. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them now, before I switch off. I can answer anything if anyone has anything. Otherwise, I'm here every week. Now that you guys have signed up, you will get an automatic email reminder with the new link in for next week's one, which will be sent out on Wednesday evening. So you won't need to do anything. It'll just appear in your inbox.